This is the second video for the line pattern project. You can see I have my quilt mounted, basted down, and it's floating, so I always put a line of pins along the front edge here just to keep a little bit of tension on the top. Before we get going, I want to show that I'm going to be using this clicker. It's a presentation clicker today. It's really useful for when you're doing line pattern. This one I got off Amazon. It's about $10, dead cheap. It has a little transmitter here that I'm going to put in the top of my tablet. Turn it around, get it in the right way. Okay, and then on the side, it's got an on-off switch, so I'll make sure it's on. Okay, so that's what I'm going to be using. The other thing to have handy for this project is a notebook, because I'd just like to note down the height of the patterns I'm using in line pattern, just in case IQ should shut down and forget everything. I've got it all right here. There's no reason why it should do that, but it's just safety. So I'll put that to one side just now. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is some stitch in the ditch. And I'm going to stitch in the ditch along here and along here. Now I have a small machine, so I can't come any further forward than that. So I could do this here, but I'd rather advance before they do that. I'm just going to do the ditch work on here and the ditch work here. Okay, so that's the first thing I'm going to do. So if you come up to the screen, then you can see what I need to touch. So here we go, main menu, design sew quilt, start new, and I'm just going to go straight to line pattern. I'm going to choose line pattern. I don't need to add a block because I'm not putting a pattern in an area. I'm showing IQ directly where it is going to stitch on the quilt. So I'm going to choose line pattern. Okay, it says move the needle along the path and touch OK to sample the points. This is where the clicker will come in handy. Any place you see a button that has that little symbol on it means you can use the clicker. Okay. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lower my needle down on my machine so that it's close to the fabric. That means I can mark where the pattern is going to go much more accurately. This is not a very big quilt, so I can probably get away with starting on the left, marking all the stitch in the ditch all the way to the right. If I had a larger quilt, I'd probably start in the middle and work out to each side, but we'll see how this goes. So I'm going to go over to the left hand side. I'm going to start at a seam line, because then the join, where I have to end my stitching and start the next row of stitching isn't going to show as obviously as if I started in the middle here. So I'm going to start here at this intersection. Let's put the needle down a little bit further. Okay, I'm not going to touch OK on my screen. I'm going to touch that button on my clicker and you'll hear it beep. And I'm just going to be looking very carefully at my quilt. I'm not looking up at the screen at all when I do this. Okay, here we go. And I just move in very small increments to take into the fact that this might not be a perfect seam. Might not be. I need to record every little wobble and wibble if I want accurate stitching in the ditch. I'm also trying to look directly down the needle rather than at too much of an angle. Okay, now I'm going to come along here. this side. Okay, I think that's as far as I'm going to go. So if you go up to the screen, you can see where I marked the stitching line. I've pressed OK, so now I have to touch finish so that IQ knows I've finished. Okay, and so there's the pattern that's going to be stitched. Remember when I got to the line pattern page, I didn't choose a pattern because IQ will automatically do a straight line as the default when you first get to line pattern. So I didn't have to choose the line, it did it automatically. Okay, so now we're ready to sew it. So quilt, select the first pattern to quilt, it's this one. Continue. Sequencing is complete, it says, so I will touch sew quilt. And IQ will move to the start. Does its one stitch to bring up the bobbin thread. There we go. I don't have to move it right back into place, IQ will move itself. I'm going to stitch this fairly slowly. So I'm going to hit, it says please set the regulated stitch length or constant speed on your quilting machine. I'm on constant speed, got my dial set to where I think I want it. I've got my speed on IQ set to 1 inch per second and the details at 0.8. So we will see how this stitches. I can use my clicker to start this. Thread break detected. Okay, I'm not around my. I think it was just a loose thread, so I'll just hit restart. Okay, start. Ooh, interesting. Let's make sure this is threaded here twice. Let's get that back. Okay, let's start again. Restart. Okay. Start. Oh, hello. Stop it. Okay, since my machine stopped 3 times and told me there was a thread break, we paused the video for a minute whilst I sorted out what the problem was. I just disconnected the thread break sensor, blew it out, reconnected it so it was seated firmly, and everything seems to be working so far. So let's carry on. Let's use my clicker. Okay, it's done. So I'll move it to one side, I'll cut the threads. As it was going along on the top here, I was kind of watching where it was stitching and I was using my fingers just to move the fabric slightly, and I over anticipated what it was going to do, so it jumped the ditch there. But I'm not going to worry about that. This is my piece, doesn't matter. It could be better in the ditch, but that's good for me for now. Okay, we've stitched that, it's done. So up here on the screen, I don't need this anymore. I've stitched it. So I'm going to go add edit pattern, delete pattern, select it, continue, yes, get rid of it. Then I'm not confused about which one I'm going to be stitching. As soon as I've stitched something, I'm going to delete it. It'll keep the screen clear, clean. You don't need it once it's been stitched. So now we're going to do another bit of stitch in the ditch on this seam here. Okay, so again we're going to choose line pattern. It says move the needle along the path and touch OK to sample points. Same thing again. I'm going to move my machine over. I'm going to lower my needle down so it's really close to the fabric, and I'm going to use my clicker whilst I move the machine. So, okay. Corner. See if I can mark this a little better than the previous one. Sometimes when you're looking at an angle, it's hard to get exactly the right place. Almost there. And I'm going to stop at this seam line. Okay, and then I can hit finished. There's the next bit of stitching we're going to do. So I'll hit sew quilt, touch the pattern I wanted to stitch, continue, sew quilt. That's the one stitch. Now you, of course, I've got this speed set to speed 1 and details 0.8. If you want to go more slowly, go ahead. If you feel more comfortable with the machine moving more slowly so you can see exactly where it's stitching. Let's give this another try at this. Speed. Okay, go. Yay, not bad. Okay, let's pull up the bobbin thread. Pull that up and cut it. Okay. I always sew the ends in. That's why I'm leaving tails. Okay, so that's our stitch in the ditch done. I'm done with that on the screen. So I'm going to go add edit pattern, delete pattern, touch it, continue. Yes, it's gone. Nothing more to worry about. Okay, so now, if you look down at the quilt, what we're going to sew first is the pattern in the border here, in the outside border. Again, I've got a smaller machine, so I can only stitch down this far before I have to advance. If you've got a larger throated machine, you may be able to go further. This is all I can do. So, okay, let's move my threads out of the way. Now I am going to mark on quilt the block for this border, just so I know the height that I can make the pattern, so it isn't too small and it isn't too big. So I am going to, up here, I'm going to choose add block. How do you want to define the block? Mark on quilt. Okay, again I can use my clicker. So I'm going to move the needle to the first point of the block, which I will start over here, and I'm going to start at this seam line. Again, I'm going to lower my needle a bit. I'm going to come down as far as I can for this. This isn't as critical as marking for the stitch in the ditch, but I'm going to keep it as close as I can, so I probably won't mark as many points. Let's put that needle down a bit lower, it's better. A bit too low, scraping on the quilt. Come down as far as I can, that's as far as I can go. Okay, now I'm going to go out to the outside edge. Now, I don't mark right along the raw edge. I like to mark the foot's width away from the edge, because that allows for a 1/4 inch binding in my mind. Alright, there. And I'm just going to mark that corner and zoom right along to the other corner, because I know that top edge is pretty straight. Come down here, come down here, down here, as far as I can, and then I'll just hit close block on the screen and finished. Okay, I'm coming back to the middle so you can see. So there's my border marked. There's my border marked on the tablet. Right. So now we're going to put the patterns in there. So I'm going to go add edit pattern, add pattern, line pattern. And here we are at the line pattern page. If I start marking a pattern right now, it'll only be a straight line. So I need to go to my catalogue to get the pattern I want for this border. Again, this is a small quilt. I could probably get away with stitching all the way from the right to the left, but I'm going to start in the middle. I'm going to start in the middle and stitch out to the left first, then come back to the middle and stitch out to the right. It adds another start and stop, but that's really neither here nor there. So I'm going to touch the button that says catalogue. Here's my line pattern project catalogue, and I am looking for the one I'm going to use, which is this one, Swag with Lollipop. So I'm going to choose that. Continue. Nothing on the screen yet because I haven't shown IQ where it's going to stitch. So I'm going to start in the middle, up here. Okay. I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to move my machine and you will see the pattern appear on the screen. Okay. I'm going to move my machine 4 squares to the left. So 1, 2, 3, 4 squares to the left. There's one repeat of the pattern. Can you see I've done 4 squares to the left? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So back up at the screen. There is my pattern. You can see it's much too small. The height right now is 2 inches. I'm going to change the height simply by dragging it up until I like how it looks. Okay. And then when I like how it looks, I'm going to look back down here to see what the actual height is, and it's 3.823. That's what I'm going to write down. So Swag with Lollipop is 3.823. Now IQ will remember that, but that's just for my peace of mind. that there. Okay, I like that. So I'm going to hit OK on my clicker. Okay, it's changed colour, means it's fixed in place. So now I'm going to go along another 4 squares, 1, 2, 3, 4, to get to the corner. Okay. I don't care how long that is. Those squares might not all be perfectly the same size, but I'm going by the piecing so that the quilting matches the piecing. Okay, so we'll go along to the corner here. There's my pattern up on the screen, the second one. I like that, so I'm going to hit OK. Now I'm going to come down the side. So I'm coming down the side again, 1, 2, 3, 4 squares. Before I hit OK, I'm looking up at the screen. Can you see that? I don't like that empty space there. This empty space, I want to put something in there. And also I need another lollipop here. So I need to fill this space and I need to put a lollipop here. Now to put a lollipop there, all I have to do is flip. Let's see, is it flip Y or flip X? No, it's not flip Y, it's flip X, and that puts the lollipop up at the top. But I don't want to hit OK for this yet because I need to put something in the corner. So I'm going to take my machine back up to the corner and I'm going to choose a different pattern. So I'm going to hit my catalogue button and I'm going to choose Lollipop 1. I got this message. This pattern has a large overlap. Do you want to continue? All that means is that the start and the end of that pattern are very, very close together. So if I was just to repeat the lollipop one after the other, they would overlap a lot. I know that's not a problem in this case, so I'm going to continue. Okay, continue. Okay, let's just pan the screen so you can see what's going on. Okay, you can see that there's a pattern flapping around there. There's the lollipop. Right. To know what size to make it, and you can see right now it's kind of a weird oval shape. I'm going to move my machine to put this lollipop right on top of the end one of that pattern. And now I'm going to change the height of this until it matches the one it's underneath. Okay, it says height, but it shows as width on the screen. Okay, so now to get it into the corner, I'm just going to move my machine until that angle, because the bottom number here is the angle, is 45 degrees. Ooh, but before we go back, before we do that, let's go back here. Okay, the height I'm looking at there is 2.15. 2.15, so I want to keep that at 2.15 and I want the angle to be 45 degrees. 2.15. 2.15, 45 degrees. I like that, that's good. Keep it there, Helen. 45. Click. There. I got it. Okay. So that gave me a nice fill for the corner. So now I'm going to come, I'm out here now, so if I just come down, it wants to put another pattern right there. I need to come back to the corner. Let's get to the end of that. So I'm going to come back to the corner. I don't want a lollipop there, I want a straight line. So again, I'm going to go to my catalogue. I'm going to get a line, continue. I know it's there. See, there's the line. I'm going to come back to the corner. My quilt. Okay. Now I'm going to come down the side for that, another repeat of the swag with the lollipop. So I'm going to come down 4 squares. I have to change, right now I've got a straight line. Here's another magic button, but I use the other button on my clicker to activate that, which will change the patterns. So if you watch up at the screen, you'll see them change. Okay, that was the short stubby pattern, which I don't want, so I can touch remove to get rid of it. That's the one I want. So now I'll use the top button on my clicker to set that one in place. Done. Okay, it's kind of magic, isn't it? So now I'm finished, and we will sew quilt. this one, continue, sew quilt. With line pattern, I always set the pattern in place and immediately sew it. Don't set a lot in place and try and stitch them all out, because the quilt will move, as we always know. Okay, let's do this, and we will start it stitching. Continue, start. Coming up to that corner where we added the different pattern in a minute. This swag is stitching in a different order because I flipped it. Notice how the machine also hesitates slightly there. That's because there's a dwell point there, and I told it I've got my dwell set to 1. Okay, so it's done. Do that one. Let's put up the bobbin thread. Okay, stitch that. I got a bit of loose tension at the beginning there, but I'll take care of that. Okay, I'm not going to delete this right away because I want to set the other side in. You can watch me set it in, and then we'll just pause the filming whilst it's stitching. You don't need to watch it stitching again. So I'm going to the centre. I'm going to start at the centre. I'm going to add my line pattern. So I need to go add edit pattern, add pattern, line pattern. I need to hit OK, and then I'm going to move across 4 squares. 1, 2, 3, 4 for my first repeat. Now let's look up there. Okay, immediately the pattern's on the wrong side of the line, so I'm going to flip Y to get it up correctly on the top of the line. That's good. I've got the lollipop at the left hand end, which is good, so I will hit OK. 1, 2, 3, 4 more squares to the corner. Now this time I want a lollipop at both ends. So what I'm going to do is go into my catalogue. I am going to get this one, swag with 2 lollipops. There it is. It's the correct height. So I'm going to hit OK. Now we're at the corner, so I need that lollipop going out at an angle to the corner. Just a word here too. If you think your corner isn't perfectly square, then you can always draw on the diagonal with a piece of chalk or something and bring that lollipop out that's supposed to be at an angle in the corner along that chalked line, so it looks right on the quilt. I checked this one. My quilt at the top here is pretty good, so we'll just use the angle on the screen. So remember, I need the lollipop, so I have to press my second button on my clicker until I see lollipop on the screen. There it is, but that's the wrong size, so I'm going to remove that one. That's the right size, but it's too long, it's too tall. It was 2.15, I remember. That's another thing you could write down. 2.15 and 45 degrees. 45, 2.15 and 45. So now I can hit OK. Now I need the straight line because I have to come back down to the corner. I'm going to do that. Again, I'm going to use my second button on my clicker to scroll through until I see the straight line. There it is. You can't see it because it's right there. So use the top one to set it in place. Now I'm going to come down 4 squares. And I'm going to hit the second button on my clicker until I get the right swag. Not that one. I think that's the 2 lollipops. That would do. But maybe we'll go to the 1 lollipop and we'll flip Y, is it? Yes, flip Y. Okay? Finished. So that's the second side of the border set in place. Let's just zoom out so you can see the whole thing. This one's already been stitched, this one's going to stitch now, and we'll take a break whilst that's stitching. Okay? So I'll hit finished, sew quilt, this is what I'm going to sew, continue. Bring up the bobbin thread, and we'll let this stitch out. We are coming up to the end of the stitching. There it is, all done. Okay. Let's bring up the bobbin thread. Alright. Now, whilst that was stitching, I sewed in the other ends. I dealt with that little bit of funny loose tension at the beginning as best I could. Okay, now, remember I said this is a small machine. You may be able to do more than 1 repeat down the side, which is fine. I can't, so that's where I'm ending. So now the next thing we're going to do is continuous curves in these squares. Back up at the screen because I can get rid of this now. I don't need this anymore. Add edit pattern, delete patterns, select all, continue, yes. I'm also going to get rid of the block because I don't need that anymore. Finished, add edit block, delete block, select all, continue, yes. Right. I don't need to add a block for the continuous curve. I'm just using the piecing as a guide. So again, we're going to go line pattern. Okay, this one I am going to start in the middle, 2, and go out to each side because there's a lot more quilting which will move the quilt more. So I'm going to start in the middle here, and I will go out to the left first. I'm going to lower my needle. I'm going to start here. Now for continuous curves I need the arc. So again I need to go into my pattern catalogue. I'm going to get arc, continue. So now when I hit OK, and we'll go up I think first here. Now if you look on the screen you can see the arc and it's much too tall. So I'm going to change its height. I like the height of continuous curves to be about 0.3. I like that kind of roundness. And these are fairly small, well they're 2-inch squares, so that looks quite good. So I like that, so I can hit OK. Change colour so I know it's fixed. Now I'm going to come across the top here, and I'm just going to glance up at my screen to make sure the curve is in the right direction, and it is. So I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to come down to the bottom, and I'm being quite precise with where I click. Okay, I'm looking up at the screen. I'm going to flip this one so that the curve is on the other side. Okay. Now I'm going to go across to the bottom, across the bottom. Look at my screen. Okay. I'm going to go up. Look at my screen. I need to flip this. Okay. Across. Look up at my screen. Now you might wonder why I'm doing this. It's so when I come back, the continuous curves will cross over at those intersections. Actually it'll come this way. It'll cross over and it'll look better at the ones where it crosses over, rather than just bouncing in and out. If you can cross the lines, it often looks better. Okay, that one's fixed. Is that one fixed? Yes. Come down. I'm being careful about where I mark these. Y. Y. I'm going to speed up a little bit because. Okay. Okay. Oh, wrong. Undo. I moved the machine, so I'm going to undo. Come back to where it should be. Hit. Flip Y. Okay. Okay. Up. Flip Y. Okay. Okay. Flip Y. Okay, now I'm coming across here. That's okay. This way. Flip Y. Okay. Flip Y. Okay. Okay. Flip Y. Okay. Down to here. Okay. Now I'm coming back. Okay. Now before I head back, I'm going to touch this button that says snap off. I'm going to turn the snap on. Now when I come back, I don't have to watch my quilt because I marked those points precisely. I'm just going to look at the screen and make sure the arcs are in the right direction. Because, I don't know if you can zoom in on this, when my needle gets close to that point, see a green circle comes through it, which means that arc is going to snap to that point. So I don't have to mark it accurately the second time. If I did it accurately the first time, it'll stitch to there. So we'll go OK, I'm coming this way. Flip Y, flip Y, okay, up, flip Y. So I'm looking at the screen now, not my quilt. Up, this way, okay, this way. Okay, now I'm going to look at the quilt because this outside corner I haven't marked. And look, see what I did? I didn't look at the screen, so the arc's going the wrong way. So I'm going to hit undo. I'm going to hit flip Y. Now I can hit OK. Across, I've got a mark there, so that's OK. Down, hit flip Y. Let me undo that. I don't think it snapped. No. And you've got to see the little green circle to know that it's snapped to that previous point. Okay. Oh, flip it. Okay. Okay. Flip Y. Okay. Cross. Flip Y. Okay. Flip Y. Okay. Okay. Flip Y. Okay. Flip Y. Okay. Okay. And we finished. So there's my continuous curves. Okay, so we'll watch this one stitch out. Sew quilt. This is the one we're sewing. Continue. Sew quilt. We'll see how well I mark this and if the quilt moves at all. Start. Just made the stitches a little bit smaller. I must have knocked the dial and they were getting a little bit big for my taste. Oh, now I'm out of bobbin thread, so I will hit restart. Cut this off. Get a bobbin from the other end of the table. Okay, I changed my bobbin. I've moved my machine back to where I want to restart. I will hit OK. Make sure it's going. I'm looking up at the screen. There was a little arrow showing it was going to go up on that green line. That's not the direction I'm going in. I want to go up on that line there. So I'm looking at my little arrow to make sure it's doing that. Should I do that again? Did you? Okay. So I hit OK. Bring up my bobbin thread. And it'll set off. That one's way off. I didn't pay attention when I marked that one. And there we are back at the beginning. Come back over here to see this one that missed. When I was placing the arcs and watching for that green circle on the screen, it must have moved slightly away from the snap point when I hit OK. It didn't match up well. I'm going to leave it. I'm not going to change that. But that's a good reason to keep watching for that green circle around the snap point before you continue. Okay, I'm going to do the other half of this. I don't think you need to see that because you saw the process of how I flipped the arcs and the way I went. Stitch that up. And that will be the end of this first part of the line pattern project. I hope that was useful. Have fun doing it.